On today's program, former host Brenda Sanders is out in the garden to plant the clematis vine. Keeping with the former host, Steve Dobbs visits with OSU Stillwater's urban forester about a tree study on campus. And floriculture professor Bruce Dunn shows grafting techniques for vegetable plants. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Tulsa's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Clematis is a great vine to put in your garden. One of the reasons is it's not one of those overpowering vines that can take over. They're pretty well behaved. And the other thing is the range of colors that you can get with these nice large blooms on them is wonderful. And what we're going to plant here today is actually a white clematis. It's Miss Bateman, and it will show up very nicely in the back of this bed that we have here where we have a lot of color. The white will help set that color off. And when you plant a clematis, it's very important to do your homework first. They like to have good drainage, and they also like to be kept moist. So you're not going to want it in a place that is down in the bottom. You want to have good drainage off of it, and you also want to make sure that your soil is well amended. Now we have some pretty well amended soil here, but you can see we still, as I dug down, we still got quite a bit of clay here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some compost and work that into the bottom of the hole that I dug, and also we're going to put some of it in with our backfill dirt and kind of mix that up as we go ahead and plant in. So I'm going to go ahead and dump that out here so we can mix that in later. And then the other thing about clematis that is different than most every other plant that you plant is you actually want to plant it about 2 inches deeper than it is in the pot. And this is actually very different because most plants you want them at level or slightly above. Clematis, you want it about 2 inches deeper. And there are two reasons for this. One is that it helps the plant get more shoots, because that's one of the things. They can be kind of spindly, but if you plant them deeper, more shoots go ahead and develop. And it looks like it has a good root system on it, so that's good. And then we just go ahead and put that down in our hole. Now when we do that, we're going to want to remove the foliage down here that is below soil level, because we don't want that to rot. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. Now the other reason that you want to plant them a little bit deeper is that clematis are prone to a disease called clematis wilt. And if you have them planted a little deeper, then they'll come back from under the ground for you if the whole top wilts. So that's why. Now I got all these leaves off, so I'm going to put this down in the hole. Now while I've put the compost in here, you can also add a little bit of bone meal in with this, and that just helps give it a few nutrients. Bone meal is not a real strong fertilizer, so it's not going to burn the roots, but it just gives it a little boost as you plant. Then we go ahead and fill this in and kind of firm it down like you would with any other plant, not super firm, but you don't want any air holes down there. All right, once I've got this planted, I want to water it in, and you want to spread a little bit of mulch here. Clematis actually like to have their foot in the shade and their head in the sun. And what's going to happen here is we have this border, and so these plants are going to grow up and they're going to shade the roots. Right now they're not, so I'm going to want to mulch this in. If you didn't have other plants around, you could plant a small ground cover, or you could put some rocks or stones around here to shade the roots, because that is something that will make a clematis very fussy, is to have sun shining on the root area. Now, I've planted it here, and I've actually, if you've noticed, planted it out from the fence a little bit. You want it to be out from your structure just a bit, especially if it's something like this, or if you're going to plant it on a wall, so that it can actually get rain, because if it's right up next to it, it's not going to get as much rain down here as it is out here. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the post that it came with, because they're kind of useless at this point. It works well while it's in the nursery to keep the vine from being tangled up, but it's not going to help us out much once we've got it planted. And you can also come in and cut back your vine a little bit. Now this one is actually really got quite a few shoots on it, but if you cut it back, it will help it get more shoots. So we're going to come, and right here, if you can see, right here at a bud, right above a bud, I'm just going to cut it flat right above there, and that will cause it to go ahead and branch below. So here we go, right here. We're just going to come in right above that bud. You can see where they come out. And that will help. And that also helps me get it loose from my post here. Now we have it trained up against this fence, and clematis are in the twining group of vines. And so they actually need something a little smaller than this fence to grab onto. And these are kind of a cross between a twiner and something that has tendrils, because these little leaf shoots actually kind of act like a tendril. They'll grab around anything small, but if you notice, it's not going to grab around this. So what would help with my vine training is to get something like some wire cages or cattle panels or something like this that my vines could twine around. This would be very good to put back here along the fence, and we could just attach it to the fence. Now you could use something like one of those fan trellises. The important thing to remember is make sure your trellis is planted firmly in the ground, so that after your vine grows, it isn't going to pull your trellis over with the weight. But basically, then we can take and start training our vine onto our trellis. And another thing is to kind of, if you can, as you go, train them kind of horizontally to begin with. Right here, we'll tie it on kind of horizontally. And that way, you can space these out. This really does have a lot of shoots. It's going to be good to work with. And come in and just tie them on. I had a tie here. Okay. That's the thing about a clematis, is that if you pay a little attention to it right at the beginning and get it trained right, they become pretty maintenance-free, and they provide a lot of enjoyment for the garden.
Hello, my name is Courtney DeKalb. I am currently a senior at Oklahoma State University studying horticulture business. I've been at the Botanic Garden for about 3 years now, doing database management and plant accessioning. Plant accessioning is where we use numbers to associate with plants so that we can look them up in the database. We also use dog tags, seen here on this ginkgo, with the accession number, so that if we lose our labels, we can look up the plants and replace the labels. We like to keep our plants labeled so our guests know what they're looking at in case they're interested in possibly purchasing it for their own landscapes. We also like to use accessioning and database management so that we can keep track of what's doing well in Oklahoma, what's not doing so well in Oklahoma, and those sorts of things. I initially got interested in horticulture because I was vegetable gardening at home with my dad in high school, and I decided that this is what I wanted to do, so I came to Oklahoma State. I've really enjoyed my time at Oklahoma State University. It's been a great 4 years. I plan to attend grad school next year, and I couldn't have done it without the faculty at Oklahoma State.
We're on the campus of Oklahoma State University today here in Stillwater, and I've got a special guest joining me today. Actually, he's our urban forester for landscape services, and I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Chris Martin. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Steve?
Chris has been with us going on 3 years now, I guess?
Almost 3.
And Chris has done a phenomenal job. And Chris's title again is urban forester, and a lot of folks, Chris, probably don't think about an urban forester for a university. Kind of tell me what your role is here.
Well, it really involves managing all the trees on campus. You know, that deals with everything from pruning to removals, planting. You know, anytime we do a new landscape, I deal with the landscape crew to help install the trees. So anything revolving around tree care, really. And part of that was an inventory that we did as well.
And of course, Chris, you know this, that trees pretty much dictate everything that we do on campus from maintenance. And so we took on a big project over the last several years in inventorying all the trees on campus. You might tell us a little bit about why we even needed to do an inventory.
Yeah, well, it's really important. I think when I got here, we didn't have one. And it's really important to know what you have. You know, it helps you manage the trees, and so I was a little surprised with some of the results. I knew some of them, like the bur oaks and the bald cypress and lacebark elms, were going to be some of the top 5 or so, but I was a little surprised that crepe myrtles made it to number 6 and shantung maples made it to number 11. So you never know what you have until you do an inventory, and it's really important for management.
And management, but also diversification, because you talked about those different species. What were the top species that we had?
Shumard oak, bald cypress, Chinese pistache, bur oak, and lacebark elm are the top 5.
And why is diversification important?
Well, it's really important, as you've seen in the past with Dutch elm disease, and recently with emerald ash borer and Asian longhorn beetle. If an invasive comes in and you have all of one species, then it can really destroy the urban forest. So the inventory is really important for that, because it lets us know what we have and how much we have. So we can plant diversified species, but not only the species, but the age class as well, so that it doesn't all mature at the same time.
Correct. And so now with our future plantings, we know what maybe to pull back on a little bit and try different species. So that's been great. I think what surprised me the most was the value of our trees. Yeah. Talk about how many trees we have on campus, the total inventory, and what they were valued at.
Yeah, so the total inventory came back. It took us 3 years to do, actually, and we used a forestry student. She did a great job for us. And it came back with a little over 2,900 trees. The total value was $9.3 million, and that included a canopy coverage of campus of 5.2%.
And that is really a low number, is it not? Typically, the goal is what?
It depends. I think it's regional, but normally they say 30 to 40%. But understandably, where we are, and you know, even Tulsa probably would have a higher percentage than we would, just because of where we're located.
But we're actively trying to plant more trees, of course, to bump that number up.
Yes.
You know, we're just happen to be standing by a tree that's probably one of the most popular, a bur oak, and Chris knows this. We probably have more weddings at this particular site than any place on campus because of this spectacular tree. So Chris, let's talk about this particular tree. Again, it's a bur oak.
Sure.
What was its value, and what did you find about this one tree?
Well, it's a little over $19,000, which is, I mean, if you can tell by the size of it, it's a very large tree. You know, the stormwater benefits, where it reduced the runoff by about $3.30 a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they have a special calculation for that, but it's still a good improvement. And some of the other benefits are it's 150 pounds per year of carbon that it sequesters, and you know that's kind of a big thing now with climate change and everything, that that's really important on a lot of people's minds, so that helps. And the avoided runoff in meters squared is 1.3, so that calculates the $3.30 per year.
And how tall is this tree? Do you remember?
I think it was 56 feet, if I remember correctly.
And the width is quite impressive.
It's 74 feet.
So much wider than
It's much wider, yes.
And again, just a beautiful specimen of a tree. Now, the other thing, Chris, that we're very proud of is with all of this work that we've done, we've implemented a tree care plan, and we've got a dedicated budget, and again, we know the inventory. But in 2012, we were awarded Tree Campus USA status, which was the first major university in the state of Oklahoma to receive that recognition.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Tree Campus USA.
Well, it's set up by the Arbor Day Foundation in Nebraska, and the idea or the goal is to increase sustainability and education about trees and to help maintain them. And there's 5 criteria that you have to follow. One of them is an Arbor Day celebration. One of them is a dedicated budget, a dedicated tree plan and a tree board. Then a service learning project which involves the students. Normally we try to tie that around Arbor Day or Arbor Week, and a dedicated budget for that.
Okay, and this is something that we have to apply for each year?
Yes, every year you have to apply for it, and we just found out last month that we received it, and this will be the 4th year in a row.
Okay. Well, very good, Chris. It's just phenomenal the work that you and the students have done on the trees, and we appreciate the update, and man, keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, today I'm going to talk about grafting. You may have heard this term before, but it's combining 2 different plants into one single plant. It's pretty common in the ornamental industry. You might see the tree roses, you might see some of the weeping forms of trees. Pretty common in the fruit industry as well. You might see grafting on grapes or pecans. But today I've got some tomatoes here. So it's also important as far as the vegetable industry. It's becoming kind of more of a hot topic, looking at having a root stock, so the lower piece of that graft, something that has disease resistance or it's adapted to a certain soil, or it's also very vigorous root stock. And then using a scion, the scion piece, that's what's going to be the top part of your graft, and that's what you're going to actually get as far as the fruit. So if it's some kind of heirloom variety or something that produces big, nice slicing tomatoes. As far as grafting, you'll see that there's several different methods. Kind of depends on the size of the stalk. If you've got a really small plant here, like what we've got here, and I've got these separated over here. Okay, so this is going to be my maxiflora. This is my root stock piece here. And so for this smaller piece here, cut it right below this cotyledons. I just cut it straight across, and then we can use one of these little grafting clips here. And they come in different sizes as well. So you really got to know what size material, plant material that you're working with. Okay, so these smaller clips, they only work as well on the smaller plants. There's also some larger clips that we'll see as far as the larger plant material. Okay, so that's going to be my rootstock piece here. And then here's my scion piece here. I'm going to cut it. And since this is still pretty small, I might reduce it a little bit and just kind of trim a couple of these leaves off of it, and that's just going to help reduce that transpiration that's going to occur, okay, or that water loss. So once you have that, you have your piece, you've already got your other piece cut here, and then you can just kind of open up that clip and then slide it on down. Okay, so that's one way of this is you might see it as a tube graft here. Okay, with larger material. Let's see here. So this is my rootstock on this side, and this is this boxcar willy as far as the heirloom that I want to be on the top. Okay, another method here that we can see, you can do a splice graft, and basically what it is, you got this long slanting sloping cut, about a 45-degree angle, and then as far as this your scion piece here, you want to try to make the same kind of cut on it, but you'll notice that for these larger material, and again I want to reduce all this, I don't need all these leaves on here. You just need one central leaf on here. All right, so with this we can see then that you want to match up those different angles, and hopefully you're choosing a rootstock and a scion piece that are about the same size. That's what works the best ideally. So if you know that you want to do some grafting, you don't want to just work with just one or two plants, you probably want to plan out a whole tray, and that way you can kind of choose between them and see which ones work the best. Okay. All right, so you just put that clip on there. That worked pretty well. With this, whenever you put that clip on there, you also want to kind of take a look at it, make sure that that graft union didn't move. You want to make sure that you have that good contact in there, and we're trying to line up the cambium layers. Okay. So what I just showed was a splice. We can also do one that's pretty similar to that splice. Again, cutting it down at an angle. We'll cut this one as well at an angle, and then this time I'll actually come back in here, and this will be the tongue piece. You may have heard of a whip and tongue. So that's just adding a tongue piece. And then we can do the same for this one. So I'm going about a third from the top of that cut. May end up being about a half because of the size of this material. Again, with this, if you try to put the scion piece onto this rootstock with all these leaves, it's just going to want to fall over. Okay, it's also going to transpire, so it's going to probably dry out before it actually has time to callus over and take. All right, so from this piece here, we can see it should just kind of slide in here like that, and then we'll put another grafting clip on it. All right, so then this is the whip and tongue method. When you're doing these, you want to try to work as fast as possible. You don't want to cut and then go do something and then come back to it, because this material will dry out pretty fast. All right, the last one that I'll show you here is a pretty even sized rootstock and scion piece. All right, so for this one here, this is my rootstock, so I'm just going to cut it straight across. And in this case, I'm actually going to come back and just divide this right in half. Okay. And on this one here, this is the scion piece. So cut it. Actually reduce it again. Okay, then in this case, since we split this, we need to basically form a wedge that'll go inside. And then usually I make another cut, come back and just kind of even out that bottom piece so that you end up with this wedge piece. Find a clip for it. Square it up at the base. Again, this one here, you should end up with kind of a flathead screwdriver on the top, and then this wedge base at the bottom of it. Okay, all right, so once you have your grafts that you're working with, again, you don't want to leave these out very long. So with these, I'm just going to set them inside. I have this container here, and again, you want to be pretty careful with these. You don't want to grab them by the tops or anything, because again, you just barely hold them on with those clips. I've got a trash bag here. Basically, you want to put this in a high humidity environment, and that way they're not going to transpire. If we just left them out like this on a hot day like today, probably a matter of 15 minutes, these will start wilting over. Okay, so I've got a spray bottle here. I'm just going to kind of give them a light misting. And I'm also going to spray this bag down as well. And again, that should give me this high humidity environment. Okay, so the idea here is, again, we'll leave it in, put this, you don't want it in direct sunlight. You want to put it in some kind of indirect sunlight. You could put it like underneath a table or in a cabinet. Basically, it just needs this dark environment for about 7 days. At that point, this graft should start to heal where that graft union is, and then you can slowly acclimate it to light. You might check this just to make sure that it is a high humidity environment. You should see water start building up on the edge of it. So hopefully then, after a week, you move it out, give it a little bit more light, and then move it on to some more light from there. And hopefully you'll have a good, successful graft as far as the vegetables. Okay, so today we worked with tomatoes. It's also common, generally if you're working within species, so if you want to just try different tomato, different cultivars, But there's also cases that you'll see that you could even try working within the same family. So something like grafting tomatoes onto peppers, or you can even find crazy grafts out there as far as tomatoes and potatoes. Cucurbits, there's a lot of grafting within those if you think of all the different melons as well. But again, generally the reason for grafting this is you're trying to use some kind of vigorous rootstock to increase fruit production or some kind of disease resistance, whether it's verticillium or tobacco mosaic virus or any kind of viruses or wilt diseases.
Here's one of the great gardening activities coming up in Oklahoma. Next week, we are working on the hardscapes. David Hillock visits Buckley's Sticks and Stones to look at the different types of rock that are available for landscape projects and how to purchase the rock when you're ready to start. Payne County Extension horticulturalist Keith Reed has an inexpensive method to keep your landscape projects on the level. Mike Miller joins David to get our pond ready for the season. And Steve Dobbs and urban forester Chris Martin are back to talk about the interactive plant labels on the OSU Stillwater campus. So join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.